This would be quite a dark story, but yeah, you've asked me, so here's the question. I was quite young when my dad died. I was 23. He was a very strong person. He was, I remember being a kid and I would sit on his back and he'd go around on all fours and be the person you'd go to when you skinned your knee and all that stuff that parents do. And all of a sudden it was just gone. And within 6 weeks of him feeling a bit off, he was dead.
Wow.
And that just reminded me at 23, you're not here forever. It doesn't matter how strong you are, how much you think you're going to be here forever. You're not. I see other people, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, but I see other people get really bogged down with grief. And they're looking back to, oh, it's a year since this happened and it's our first Christmas. And I had a little bit of that, but I just used it as fuel and thought, this is the best reminder I can possibly have not to waste.
Welcome back to the Coachful Coaching Leadership Podcast. Today I'm here with Colette Mason. Colette Mason, you are a book coach, right?
That's true. Yes. Yes, I am.
Yes. You want to talk to everyone and tell them what a book coach is and what do you do?
Okay. A book coach is somebody who can streamline the process of getting your book from out of your belly, the fire that's in your belly, and turning it into a physical book that you can hold. And it's all about streamlining, making that process really simple and encouraging people. Sometimes, like when you're making a website or something, you can have a wobble. So you walk alongside the person and then make sure they be the best they can be on paper.
Yeah. So I was looking at your website, ColetteMason.com. We'll have it in the show notes.
Yes.
When I'm looking at this, one of the things that just come to mind and haunt me is how I've stood in front of or sat in front of a computer or, sat in front of a piece of paper with a pen in hand, and that's all I get done, right? And I'm trying to write something. And one of the things I think I would have appreciated early on, especially as a teenager learning to write, is what is the process of writing? How do you get ideas down on paper? And how do you extract all that and, progress in your writing? And it seems like you have some sort of a methodology to help people, get ideas to paper.
Yes.
Can you, is it okay we dive into some of that, like how you actually coach people in writing who need to write a book and how they can get it out faster?
Yeah. In a former life, I was a programmer and I learned about creating minimum viable products. And that was all about creating a very simple set of requirements that were really strong. And you thought, yeah, it's going to be worth building this bit of software. And I thought, do you know what? That applies to a book because one of the biggest problems is people wonder, is my book going to be good enough? And what should I write about? And this sentence that you used for programming was going to work really well for books. And it was just simply, as a type of person, I need to know or be able to do something specific so that I get a benefit. So in my case, it could be as a book coach, or somebody wants to write a book, I need to know how to organize my information clearly so that I help more people and get known for my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that very simple statement instantly tells you what you should be writing about and that people are going to like it when it's finished. So it unlocked this big thing straight away. And I thought, well, what is this question that you're going to talk about in the book? And usually that's what people want to ask you when they meet you for a coffee, and they're brain picking and they're interested in how you've done something, and they're wanting to ask that one, well, how did you do a book in a week? They're curious about it. And that's when lots of people ask you that same question, that's a great thing to base the book on. And I found once people get that between their teeth, then you just need to expand on it and write on it. And then it's fairly straightforward. If you really want to write it in your heart and help people, then it comes out. If you're doing it as a vanity project, then even that might not be enough to make you write.
Yeah, vanity project. I mean, it's similar to anything else if you don't have a good why behind it. Like, talked about it on this podcast, how it's easy to start a podcast nowadays. All you need is an iPhone, right, with an excellent camera. And if you want to use a headset, you don't even need a microphone like this. But how many people do it? 2 episodes, even get to 10
Yes.
episodes. And someone on my podcast said, hey, if you make it to 20 episodes, you're in the 1% of individuals who actually have truly a podcast, because it's so easy to start, but it's hard to maintain. And so back to what you're saying, like if you are writing a book for the sake of vanity, because you want your name out there on a bookshelf and the glory and, you know, you're J.K. Rowling and you name the author, right?
Yeah.
It's probably not a good reason to toil through this, because you're going to have to go through, like, people I've known who've written books, they tell me it's just hell, you know, for not just months, but years sometimes.
It can be. Yeah, I think it depends on the nature of the book. If it's a very granular book that needs lots of details checking, then that's naturally going to take a long time. But if it's more based on your signature system, then those can be done a little bit more quickly. But yeah, the really, like, the academic texts are going to take a long time to do with all the citations and all those other complexities that you don't need with a simpler hearts and minds, come and join me within my system type book.
Yeah. One of my friends, he wrote a programming book, literally coding.
That was proofreading. That would be lots of fun.
He was telling me that. Yeah, at one point the publisher came back and said, "You need to cut this down by 50 pages. Oh, actually, you need to add more pages here on this chapter." And so I'm stretching out something that doesn't need to be stretched out. I'm like, yes, you are. So it's that's where it's like it doesn't feel like your work anymore. So
yeah, that could be difficult. Yeah.
So the people you work with, like, are they typically self-publishers, or are they working with publishing companies, or do you publish? Like, I'm just curious how that process works.
Yeah, I've helped a really nice gentleman, Simon Hartley, who's a sports psychologist, and now he helps businesses with teamwork. And he's worked with traditional publishers and on his own. So he was keen to do it that way. Most people are doing it on their own because they haven't got a great deal of money to spend on it. And there's some vanity publisher people out there who will prey on you and say, oh, for £10,000, we'll help you with your book and we'll give you 1,000 copies that sit under the stairs. And so that they don't really want to go there either, because they can see there's no value in that. And then they want to either do it themselves or do it with somebody like me who can make them feel nice while they're writing the book, give them some reassurance and, streamline it a bit. So most of the people I work with are independent. And I think the point you made about having to extend a chapter of the book, the traditional publishers saying, well, you need this word count. And sometimes subjects need different word counts. A recipe book hardly needs any words. It's the photos of the food that make the point. And then if it was a book on existential philosophy, that would need loads of words, because very few pictures would describe that. So trying to hit a particular word count is quite difficult, I think. And by publishing on your own, you can make it the right length it needs to be to get the result that you're promising. And I think that's quite a nice way to do it. And you can choose your time frame. You get 70% royalties versus 8% royalties. And I find the big publishers only want to take people with big audiences these days, the TV stars, the celebrities. They don't really want to take the small people with a 10,000 mailing list or something like that, because they know that it's going to be hard work selling the book. So you might as well sell it. You're not going to get that benefit of them selling the book that you think you might. And indie authors earn more than traditionally published authors. A traditionally published author might earn £7,000 a year from their royalties. So that's not great if you're hoping to have that as a cornerstone of your life. Whereas with 70% royalties, then you are going to get more for your efforts. So I think that's worth bearing in mind.
Yeah. And so when you work with your clients to, like, say I was someone coming to you and say, hey, Colette, I'm trying to write this book on, I don't know, water bottles.
Yeah.
I'm interested in water. I'm just staring at my water bottle here. I guess, how would you coach me through that process?
First thing I would do is make sure you really want to write the book. So you're going to have enough oomph to get to the end of the process. If we get over that bit, the next thing is going to look at similar water bottle books and see what readers like and dislike about them, so that we can make sure what we're making not only pleases us, but people are going to want to buy it as well. Because selling books is difficult, and that's why everyone wants a traditional publisher. They think, oh, they'll wave the magic wand like a fairy, and suddenly loads of people will be walking around with my book, and it doesn't work that way. So by looking at what sells, you can then take a lot of worry off yourself, thinking, I'm going to create a book that people are interested in. And it doesn't mean copying somebody else. If you think about feeding a friend, you might give them an ice cream or a sandwich or a 3-course dinner. You might take them out somewhere. There's loads of different ways to cover a subject and make it enjoyable. So don't worry about being too close to somebody else. It really doesn't matter. And then work on, and then once you can see it's got marketability, then you can see how other people have gone about it and see how you do it similar, which bits you do slightly different. And then from there, you've got a really good starting point to start filling out your chapters, which are the little bits, the little milestones when all put together that give you the big promise. I like to think of books as magic wands, and they're just little small things. You can pick them out and wave them at a problem, and with as little pain as possible, the problem disappears or the goal's achieved. And all those little chapters are like every little movement of the wand.
So when you're going through this creative process, and yes. I recently started reading a book, The War of Art. You know that book?
Yes, I know it. Yes.
Geez, I can't remember the author.
Tzu?
Yeah.
Sun Tzu? Oh, no.
No.
Oh, no,
that's the Art of War.
That's the Art of War.
Yeah, Sun Tzu. But this is the War of Art, and it's really talking. It's almost like a fun take on what holds back creative people from being able to create. The author talks about resistance as this thing, and book writing and such, as it is like many other art forms. A lot of times folks are just, you're just, and they're like, I don't know where to go with this, right?
Yes.
So I'm curious, like from your perspective, like what are some of the common things that hang people up, like from that creative process? What holds them back from being able to put words onto a piece of paper or it's onto a website? What's holding them back, and how do you help them with that?
Imposter syndrome is one of the biggest things. Who's going to listen to me? Who's going to care? That kind of problem is quite difficult. I was working with a friend who was creating a membership site for soccer coaches, and he was just finishing his site, and it was all about taking kids to the park on a Sunday and making them dribble the football around cones and all that sort of stuff. And the following week, David Beckham does his training for football people, and everyone's like, who's going to listen to me when David Beckham's got his football training out at Wembley Stadium and everything? And his friend said to him, well, you're the one who's arguing with the parents at the touchline and helping, making sure there's no glass by the goal mouth. People are going to listen to you because you're doing what the other soccer coaches are going to be doing. And I think that's important to bear. People want to learn from somebody who's very much like themselves. So even if you're not the big shot, you've still got a really important perspective. You've probably not got the advantages that some of the bigger names have got. You're starting with the same resources as your reader and things like that. And I think that helps get rid of that imposter syndrome, because you are good enough to make a start. And then judgment and trolling and things like that are another big issue. Particularly, when I was at school, I was told my English was horrific. That held me back for like 30 years, I think. 28 years, I thought I can't write anything down because, I'd had a few red pen episodes in my English lessons. And I thought, that's not great, is it? When we're speaking, people don't feel the need to jump in and say, oh, you've had a split infinitive in that sentence. As soon as you write it down, the vultures start swooping and they want to go, look what you've done there. You've ended that with a preposition, fool. And I think that holds people back too. And it shouldn't really. I think, however, as long as you care about what you're saying and there's not lots of silly mistakes in it, then if you mix up the usage of less and fewer, I don't really care, and I don't think writers should care either.
Yeah, I mean, just back in my school days, like in grad school too, and I remember some classmates who, like this one individual, literally writing the thesis, and literally they would stare at the screen there. I'd come back 2 hours later, same paragraph. And then they were serious. And the problem I found with that, at least this one individual, was they wanted it perfect. Whatever comes off their fingers needed to be perfect. right?
Yes.
The first time. And that sounds like what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's two ways you can get around that I find are really helpful. One way is to speak your information and get it transcribed, because you literally can't go back and edit what you've just said. It removes that temptation to do that, because what you really want to do is get the first draft of the book out so you can see where you are and you can get some feedback on it when it's in its rough state. A bit like tasting a sauce, before you serve the whole meal, you can see how you feel about things. So that's quite important to get that first draft out. And then you'll feel better in yourself that something actually exists that I can polish up. That's really the best way to do it. Or to think of your book as like delivering a spoken one-day workshop, and just put some points on a board and just get used to talking about things, or just write anything and then worry about what you're going to write in the book. So maybe you talk about the last holiday you went on and how you organized traveling there. Talk about a different process and then start talking about yours once writing's less of a thing than you thought it was.
You know what's fascinating there, and they even try to teach kids that nowadays who struggle writing. Like one of my kids struggled with the writing when he was younger, right? And one of the things that was suggested was, with the technology today, you can just dictate, into the computer, and it will spit something out, and you need to modify it, obviously, like what we say. But it's amazing, like, and I kind of think about myself, like back to thesis writing. That's the last time I had to write something really thick. Yeah. What helped there was, what didn't hang me up was, like, first of all, it was the discipline. Every day I allotted like an hour. I went to the noisiest place possible, a cafe. I actually took pencil and paper, right? I didn't use a computer, and I was writing over a cup of coffee. And I basically said, whatever comes out of my brain is whatever goes on paper. Right. And it didn't matter. It could be garbage, but it was 5 pages of garbage. It's great. Yeah. And I have something to work with, at least. Right? Yes. But I was able to complete everything in a short amount of time. Right. Because I just let it out. And it reminds me of this movie. I can't remember the movie name anyway. Sean Connery. Do you remember that one where he's like this famous author, and he took this kid under his wing?
Ghost, is it? It might have been Ghost. Something about he's got to get a book finished and he has a ghostwriter to help him. Is it that one?
I don't remember. He took a kid under his wing, and they were using a typewriter, and he just told the kid, let it out, right? Like, just write, just type. Don't think, just type. And I remember that stuck with me later on when I was writing. Like, just write. It doesn't matter what comes out, just write. Yeah. And that really helped. Whereas versus like trying to reach perfection the first time something comes out.
Yeah, it's really hard to do it that way. It just takes forever. And the longer you take, the more you learn new things or get new insights, or you've got a better example you want to put in. The whole target you're aiming for just moves. Yeah. So people allow months to get their book done, and I think that might not be the best idea. So I thought, let's have a look at human productivity. Let's look at how many words somebody can write in a minute and how many they can dictate in a minute. And then I can get a word count and estimate the time. And the University of Cambridge found that people could type at 52 words a minute. And Stanford University found they could speak at 161 words a minute, almost 3 times as fast. So dictation is faster, and it gets rid of a lot of the mental hang-ups. And even if let's say you've got sausage fingers, as I call it, and you type at 30 words a minute, or you speak at 80 words a minute, which is when you could stop and think what you're going to say and then say it. So you're almost self-editing in your head. You can get a book done between 7 to 19 hours at those speeds. So 7 hours speaking, 19 hours typing at 30 words a minute. If your book was going to take a year, you'd have to write about 1.5 words a minute for an hour a day. And I'm pretty sure people could do more than 1.5 words a minute. So please don't make it more time than it needs to be. Yes, take care with what you're doing, but don't think it's, you're pushing the stone up the hill. It's not as long as people tell you it might be. Maybe they're telling you it takes a long time, so their achievement looks bigger. Maybe. So it doesn't have to be as painful as you might think.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like a lot of what we're talking about is back to the creative process, and that always fascinates me. whether it's writing books, composing music, thinking about your next podcast, thinking about the next questions or the questions I want to ask someone on a podcast. How am I going to produce this? How much production I'm going to put into this? But it's part of the creative process. And I'm curious from your background, right? You've done a lot of this book coaching, and you've written books and a number of books yourself. What is your creative process? Like, what do you do to put yourself in the mindset of, I'm going to do this, I'm going to write, I have the creative juices flowing?
I think with the nonfiction books I've written, the first one, I just wanted to prove to myself I could do it. And back in 2012, it was more of a special thing than it perhaps is now. I didn't really know any friends who'd done a book at that point, particularly. And I think being the first, that really motivated me. I'm one of those type A people, I think they are, who has to get it done fast and move along, and I'm one of them. So that naturally helped me. That was my temperament. With the fiction books, I hate fiction with a passion. I don't enjoy it, but I wrote 77 of them. How did I do that? Because the books were read by older people who'd perhaps been widowed. My books were going to give them a bit of joy in their lives. And I thought, even if I don't like getting to the end of this book, I'm going to be brightening up somebody's afternoon when they might be lonely, isolated, sat in a cold room because they can't afford to heat it in the winter. So it felt like sending out a little bit of gold into the world. And that made me think, well, it's not really about me. So I think I've done 1,000 books have disappeared out into the world now. So that's 200,000 nice opportunities that I've made for people. And that kept me going. I think try not to think of the book as being about you. I think that really helps. It's about how you can help with it. I think that's more that gets it done. And I think I'm one of those people who rips off the plaster. I don't sit and stew over what needs to be done, particularly with things that I don't want to do. I get told off that my spirit animal is Gordon Ramsay, and when he gets the bit between his teeth and he goes off, I'm like that. Right, this needs fixing now, and I'm going to do it now. And I just don't let excuses or anything get in my way. It's a blessing and a curse. You can neglect friendships when you've got the I must get this finished blinkers on and things like that. You might not notice a friend struggling because I've got to get the next chapter done. But usually there's not that sort of problem. And I just think the sooner it's done, the sooner I don't have to do it. Sooner I can go and do, sooner I can fun. Sweating over it tends not to make it any better anyway. I mean, if I sat and deliberated for 3 months and something better came out of it, then I might do it that way, but I'm not convinced that works any better. So I think just get it done fast and move on is the best advice.
Get it done fast and move on. So you've impacted a lot of people in your book coaching, right? And so just looking at your website, like as you said, like 210,000 plus books sold, and these are like books. You've helped coach people on writing, right?
They're my books.
Oh, they're your books. Oh my God.
They're my books. Yeah.
Okay. That is a crazy figure.
Under a pen name, because I was writing ladies saga fiction, which I'm a bit of on the X-Files, a lone gunman. I'm that sort of nerdy figure in the darkness coding. So the last thing I wanted was for people to know I was writing women's saga fiction. So I did that under a pen name. I just thought I can't bring myself to be known for this. But yes, quite yet. And then the other books with other people. So 33 books with other people. I've got one coming out in June with the next person. I dusted myself off. And I want to be honest here, writing a book can be quite tiring and difficult, and doing them with other people was quite a lot of responsibility. And I was going through a tough time in my life, and I was dealing with an older parent with dementia, and I was the only carer. So I'm having to look after their books, and I've got this horrible end of life care situation going on in the rest of my life, and it all got munged together. And I thought, I'm not sure I can still do this. I've done it 33 times. Can I still do it? And so I had a hiatus while I did the fiction, and then I thought, I can do this. And I've come back to it. And then, like I said, I've got another book coming out in a few weeks. Yeah. With somebody who's done pretty well. They've trusted me. So that's nice.
Yeah. You sound very disciplined.
I'm known for that, I think. Yes.
Yeah. And I say that Like it's very, very tough for a lot of people to be disciplined at something and say, you know what, this is what I'm going to do, and this is it's going to get done, no matter
Yeah.
what. It, and I'm extrapolating here, but it also seems like on like everyone has things going on in their life, something,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But it seems like you don't let that hold you back, in the sense of like, and this is something that someone said to me recently. On some days, success is just getting out of bed, right? On some
Yes.
days, success is just I showed up and I'm here,
Yes.
right? I
Yes.
sat down, I did a tenth of what I would usually do, but I showed up, and that's all that
Yes.
matters. It seems like you have that type of discipline. Like I showed up, I did
Yes.
something, even on your
Yes.
toughest days.
Yeah.
Like,
'Cause
yeah,
yeah.
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 Where do you
I
get
do
that
have.
mentality? Yeah.
This would be quite a dark story, but yeah, you've asked me, so here's the question. I was quite young when my dad died. I was 23. He was a very strong person. He was, I remember being a kid and I would sit on his back and he'd go around on all fours and be the person you'd go to when you skinned your knee and all that stuff that parents do. And all of a sudden it was just gone. And within 6 weeks of him feeling a bit off, he was dead.
Wow.
And that just reminded me at 23, you're not here forever. It doesn't matter how strong you are, how much you think you're going to be here forever. You're not. I see other people, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, but I see other people get really bogged down with grief. And they're looking back to, it's a year since this happened and it's our first Christmas. And I had a little bit of that, but I just used it as fuel and thought, this is the best reminder I can possibly have not to waste time. Dad was 59. I'm 54 at the moment. That's feeling quite close now, 59.
Yeah.
But that's made me really aware of you don't have forever. So I think 2 years later I was married. 5 years later I'd moved to another area and got my first house. I just rattled through everything because there's always this sense of you don't have forever. I see people saying, "Oh, I'd love to write my book," and then I'll see them on Facebook saying, "Oh, I've just watched an 8-book box set and it was brilliant." And I think, well, I wonder why you're not getting things done. If you say it matters, then where are you putting your attention?
Yeah.
And so I never had that distraction. Has never got to me like it's got its claws into some other people.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a tough story. That's a tough story. And thank you for sharing that. And, you know, when you say people are like on Facebook or social media saying, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z, whatever.
Yeah.
And this is me personally, I don't like to advertise, that I'm going to do this and that, because you know what, if I'm going to do it, I'm just going to do it without needing, I don't know what it is, like validation or this showmanship where, hey, look what I'm doing. I'm about to climb this mountain, right?
Yeah.
Mount Kilimanjaro. If I'm going to do it, I'm just going to do it. Right. And when I'm done, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's for me. It's not for someone else. And I think back to the why, like, is who you're doing this for, right? Are you doing this for yourself, for something you need to fulfill, your why? Or is this for some external validation, some sort of vanity, whatever it might be? But we're diving in a little more into like philosophy of life. But what you said there too, like it sounded like, with that, what happened with your dad, in such an early age, use that as fuel as well.
Yes.
And I've heard folks who have taken that, the mentality is like, hey, the best thing I could do for that person who's not here anymore is to live my life well, because would probably be disappointed in me if I didn't use the life that I have. And it seems like you've used a lot of the life you've had to fulfill a lot of the things you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Right.
And I like lifting people up along the way. I get a lot of joy out of unlocking people's potential. I've done a lot of mindset work and been on lots of courses and things. And I like to have not a contrarian view, but just different perspectives. And I like saying to people, have you ever looked at it like this? Watching them go, no, I haven't, but I like thinking that way and I'm going to go and use it. I love that feeling of not telling them what to do, but just directing them into something that might work a bit better for them. I like that.
Yeah, just looking at a problem or issue that's going on in a slightly different way can unlock. I'm always fascinated with the creative process, because and I speak for myself too, like, no matter what it is, like, even if it's tough situations you're going through at home or at work, but when you see, instead of roadblocks, you see possibilities,
yes,
opportunity, and it's easier said than done, but it is a practice where I see, here's an opportunity for me to do X, whatever it might be, even in the toughest situation. When you start going to learning mode and exploring mode, you actually come out the other end much better, right? You actually produce something that you probably would not have, like, you could not have imagined in a million years.
Oh gosh, yes. My current creative process has been converting a vehicle into a camper van. So I've had to do woodwork, and I've had to use a sewing machine. And again, I'm a coder. I don't use, like me, don't use sewing machines. So I've had loads of fun dabbling with that. I've done prints on fabric and all sorts of crazy stuff. Making the van mine.
Yep.
And that's been really good fun. And I've had no perfectionism with that at all. It's all been about, well, if I cut a bit of wood a bit wonky, I'll just cut another piece. It doesn't matter. And that's been quite freeing as somebody who's really struggled with perfectionism in the past. It's been nice to just see where things end up. What do I make at the end of the day? Well, if I sit on it and it breaks, I'll make another one.
It's interesting that you found that outlet for yourself, though, right? Because are you like that in your book writing process? Are you perfectionist there, or do you like let it kind of go where it goes?
I am a perfectionist, but I think, well, I would be justifying it, wouldn't I? But I do think there's a lot of studies that have been shown that the way written information is presented can give it more credibility. And also you've got the idea of, formatting and legibility. If you think about road signs, the different coloured road signs in the UK, we have like brown ones if it's a tourist attraction. So way in advance something's coming up towards you because of the way it's formatted. So I would never sacrifice book formatting, not because it doesn't look professional, but because it's more easy to understand when it's laid out in a consistent way. And I think lots of mistakes are a bit distracting in a book.
Yes,
if
absolutely.
It had one or two typos in the whole thing, okay. But if it's one or two typos a page, that's really not quite so good. So because it puts people off, it's not necessarily about the standard. It's because you're tarnishing the experience of learning from you. And I don't think you should be doing that as a teacher. And so that's how it's come out for me. But I do let something, when you're writing, say, 40,000 words, you'll always want to swap one word for another. Is somebody angry, or are they furious, or are they livid? There's so many, you just never ever hit the target with it. So 98%, as Ant Middleton says, 98% good enough is kind of good enough. It doesn't absolutely have to be struggle with perfectionism. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be look like you care.
Yeah. And I understand that, like, that is that is how you make a living too, right? And so there's quality that needs to come with it, and I understand, and because you're proud of what you do, and that's your brand. And when you put up a website and you're saying, hey, I coach people to do this, you want to teach not just the creative process and overcoming that, but also there's quality that you got to have at the end of that road too. But what I want to go back to is that I find it fascinating that you found something that where it's okay for you to just not have perfection. It catches my ear, because I've known a lot of folks who are perfectionists, and I'll tell you a story of a friend who basically said, "Hey, they're perfectionists in their job, and they're like, I've learned I want to do something cool, creative, do pottery in the evenings." I'm like, oh, that's cool. The teacher there was kind of like, okay, whatever it is today is what it is today. Your pottery today is what it is today. And this friend of mine was very, how do you say, angry that their pottery didn't turn out. I go, why are you angry? He's like, it needs to be perfect. I go, weren't you doing this pottery class to relax?
Yes.
And even the teacher was fascinated with this individual. Like, oh, what are you actually here for? Right? It definitely was not relaxing them at all. Right? And they didn't let the creative process actually. I think, when you do things like pottery, like, you gotta let it just flow. Right? There's a certain flow that needs to happen in discovery. Yeah. They're like, no, it needs to be perfect the first time. Oh, it came out crap, but this is disgusting. And I'm like, oh my God, what goes on in your brain, my friend? Like, it's so. I don't even know why I went there, Colette, but
But we did.
so yeah, but we went there. So I like to ask two more questions for you.
Okay.
One of them is like, so you've had a lot of experiences now. We talked a lot about your book coaching and that creative process. If you were to give advice to your younger self, any advice, what would you tell the younger Colette?
I would tell her to be herself a lot more. I've hidden behind what you're supposed to do a lot in my life. I got the qualifications you're supposed to have. I went to university and did a course I didn't really like because clever people went to university and that's what was expected of me. And I did a lot of things that were expected. Equally, I was a bit young and I might not have known. It's easy to say with hindsight, was that the right decision or was it not? So I think be you a lot more. The world hasn't ended when I've really been me and I've done something. I've walked out of jobs after 3 days and because I thought that's not right for me. I'm not going to do this for 2 years. So I should have done that quite a lot more. I think I would have made better decisions in life if I'd have followed my instincts a lot more. And so now I'm trying to unravel all that, and I'm having people, I'm working with people who are encouraging me to be me a lot more, and make sure people understand who I am, so I can lose the people who aren't like me and find more people who are like me. Mm-hmm. So it's resulted in a lot of missed opportunities and a lot of unpicking later on. So be yourself as much as you can. Try it on with little things, and then snowball that into bigger and bigger things that you want to do. I would think I was at the tail end of that era, like my dad's generation. You would be a draftsman, or you would, be a plumber or something. You'd have a career for life. And when I was coming along, my first jobs in the 90s, that was going quite a lot. And I don't think a job for life exists now at all because a computer's going to take your job, or AI or something. So it's, yeah, so I think you need to be yourself even more now because you haven't got that limitation of you're expected to do a job for 5 years before you do something else or whatever.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's, you triggered a memory. I had a conversation with my wife the other day about, so at one point in my early 20s, I was considering becoming a teacher, school teacher, believe it or not, right? Mm-hmm. And I was ready to, apply to teachers college and everything after university. Something happened in my life at the time, and it made me rethink about everything I was doing. And one of the things I rethought was, do I want to go to teachers college because I really want to do this, or is the thought of it interesting to me? The thought of teaching versus, you're going to be teaching the same subject every single year, the same thing. Is that going to interest you? And I realized, no, that would kill me. Yeah. And I pulled out of that, and at the time it was like, my family was like, oh, what the hell are you doing? But back to your point about be yourself. When I actually had, okay, where are you going to go now? I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do with this degree, and my parents were worried for me, but that started the journey of try this job, try this job, laid off. And they ran out of money, right? The company. Try this job. Oh, this is interesting. Like this aspect. Let me go into this world. And then eventually I ended up in tech, right? And I never thought I would work in tech at all. I didn't study to work in tech or anything. I just ended up there. But that sort of like meandering actually helped get to where I am and find something I actually enjoy doing now.
Yes.
And it's when you just throw away all those expectations that you have, unrealistic. It actually opens things up. You're following almost like the flow of water versus like trying to direct the water in a certain direction. So for sharing that, Colette. That was wonderful. So apparently you know what my last question is always to my guests, right? My last question is, ask me a question.
I just wanted to say one more thing before you ask me. It was about perfectionism.
Yeah.
What you can do when you've got your draft book written is you can give it to peers, friends, people who are going to support you that are interested in your subject and say, can you give my book a score out of 10? Can you give each chapter a score out of 10? And if anything doesn't get a 10, just let me know. And then you can gather all that feedback and you can fix any problems that you might not have spotted or some good ideas. So you know then when you publish the book that it's going to be good enough, because lots of other people have seen it and they haven't found a problem with it. And it's like turning on, when you turn on the car engine and you get some dashboard lights and some of them stay on and then they go off. It's like that, so you know that there's enough air in your tires and you've got enough oil in the tank for you to go off and drive somewhere. So do ask for other people's opinions, just a score out of 10 for each chapter, so it's easy for them, and that really helps you feel good about your book. So I forgot to mention that. I squeezed it in before the last question.
No. Yeah. And by the way, you just reminded me of, I have to do that this weekend for our mutual friend.
Our friend, yes.
Who's probably looking at this like, get to work, Dave. Get to work. Yeah. I'm like, I'll get there. I swear.
Yeah.
I think folks don't believe me sometimes too when I say I'm actually a slow reader. Like I somehow got through school, but literally, I don't know. I'm not going to attribute it to anything. I'm a very slow reader. It's good though. I find mistakes because of that, right?
Yeah.
So, anyways, total side note. Back to you, Colette.
My last
question.
So, I'm going to say we talked about going on courses and your friend on the pottery course. What is the next sort of short 6-week course, something like that you've got your eye on? What do you fancy trying?
Something starting next week is I recently achieved my ICF, International Coaching Federation, associate coaching certification, ACC. So that's like entry level, and it's very legitimate in the sense of like it shows that you have the competencies of a coach. I'm working towards now the professional PCC. And so starting next week, I am embarking on not a 6-week, but an 18-week course, right? Every week. And it's advanced coaching skills. So I'm working with Natalie Blais, who has been on this podcast before, founder of that coaching academy, and working directly with her for 18 weeks to improve my ability to be a leader. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's my next thing I'm fancying and looking to improve. And the way it's taught was wonderful, because back to the creative process is the way they teach is wonderful at that school, Canada Coach Academy, is it's not about perfection. And they ensure that like, hey, sometimes you can go through a session. It is what it is. It's the pottery. Okay. This is where this pottery needed to be today so that it's better tomorrow. It's okay where it is. And that is how they teach. And that is how you actually learn better, because you try to do different things. Coaching is an art. It is like painting. It is absolutely like painting. And that's why I'm going back to the school. Like, just try it out. Try this out. Explore this route. See where it goes and work out. Okay, that's okay. You get feedback. Here's where you can do better. Cool. Let's go back and try something else. And so they encourage you to the pottery. Try the different things. So that's the next creative process for me.
Great.
All right, Colette. Thank you. It's been almost 45 minutes with me and you.
Wow.
I know. I told you it was going to fly by.
It did.
So anything else you'd like to mention to the audience out there before we go for the day?
Just that if you've got that book inside you and you know you can help people, make a start. Go and rip the plaster off and have some fun with sharing your knowledge.
And tap your inner Gordon Ramsay.
Yes, definitely.
All right, Colette. Well, it was great speaking with you today about book coaching, but also like a lot about discipline, the creative process, and how to break down mental barriers like imposter syndrome. So I appreciate you making the time today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you very much.
All right. We'll speak again soon.
Okay.